Hi, I'm Leon. I'm an instructor at USC's Ivy and Young Academy and Art Center College of Design. I'm also the Director of Education with AIGA LA. Portfolio presentations are probably new to a lot of you, and so I thought it would be helpful to put together my top 5 tips on how to give a good Zoom portfolio presentation. Okay, let's get into it. Here are my top 5 tips for giving an amazing portfolio presentation over Zoom. But wait, before we get into the 5 tips, I think there's something important we should talk about related to your portfolio. Think of it as a design problem. What is the purpose of your portfolio? It's easy to think about it in the sort of simple ways, like it's a collection of your work. It's there to sort of show your craft, to show your skills, maybe to show some of your thinking. But really, why? The easy and pretty practical answer is to get work. And yes, that makes a lot of sense. But I think there's a really important step before you get work, and which brings me to what I think is the really critical purpose of a portfolio, and that is to get you an interview. Sometimes it's very hard to imagine that you are not your portfolio. And while your work is extremely important, in the end, people hire you, they don't hire your portfolio. Zoom portfolio presentation tip 1, make sure your tech is ready for Zoom. I find that people really underestimate how important it is and easy and simple it is to make sure that your tech is ready for Zoom. Giving presentations is really stressful. You don't want to have some tech issue interrupt you in the middle of an already stressful situation. For these tips on Zoom, I'm going to assume that you already know how to use Zoom. If you don't, it's okay. It's really easy to use and really easy to learn. And if you need some help with that, I'm going to put a link in the description. If you're using a desktop or if you're using an Android or iPhone, we'll have links there to link you to some other videos that are really helpful to teach you. To use Zoom, you're going to need a solid internet connection. Zoom is designed to work over Wi-Fi, and it works really well most of the time. Sometimes you do have some issues, and I like to, if I'm going to give a presentation, I like to always make sure I'm plugged in with an Ethernet cable to make sure that I'm getting the maximum bandwidth. You don't have to have a production quality setup to get the most out of Zoom. Paying just a little bit of attention to your video and your audio setup makes a really big difference. If you're on camera, make sure the reviewer can see you clearly. To do this, it's a really good idea to try to be in a well-lit area and do your best to avoid backlighting. You want to be the center of attention, and making sure that they can see you keeps you that way. Before you start your presentation, make sure you test your audio. Zoom has a really good built-in feature to help you do this. I would highly recommend that you spend a minute, figure it out, and make sure it's working right. Again, you don't need production quality sound when you're using Zoom, but keep in mind that if there's a lot of ambient noise in the room, it can make it hard for the presenter to hear you. So it's a really good idea to, if there's a lot of ambient sound, to just go ahead and mute yourself. And here's a really great tip. Keep yourself muted, except when you're ready to talk, push the space bar. Pushing the space bar takes you off mute, and then as soon as you release the space bar again, puts you back onto mute. And while you're talking, the focus will be on what you're saying and not on that ambient sound. And as soon as you release the space bar, you'll block it all out. Zoom portfolio presentation tip 2, reading the room. When we are talking, a huge part of whether or not we know people are listening to us or hearing us is through their body language. When you're in Zoom, you're in this little confined box on a screen, and sometimes it's hard to read people's body language. Make sure that you're giving signals to let the speaker know that they're being heard. Nodding or smiling or emoting with your face as much as you can is usually a really good idea. And maybe it's a little odd. It may be something you don't normally do, but over Zoom, you'll notice that the more you express, the more connected the speaker feels. And make sure that you're looking at the camera as much as you can. Here's a tip to make sure that you're doing that. If there's just one other person in the Zoom, I like to use gallery view and then put that person's picture right underneath your camera. So when you're sort of looking directly into their eyes, you're actually looking at the camera at the same time. So it's really easy to make that connection. Do your best to make yourself and your environment look professional. If you're concerned about how the natural background looks in your space, don't worry. You can use one of the great virtual backgrounds built into Zoom, or you can add your own image, or if those aren't really working for you, you can build your own. It's just really important to know that you don't go too far with building something that's crazy, because you really want to remain the focus of attention and allow the background to be just that, a background. Zoom Portfolio Presentation Tip 3. Remember, this is still a professional presentation. Don't show me your website over Zoom. I can look at your website on my own. Instead, if you really want to stand out, build a little keynote presentation or a PDF that we can share. It's really important that you craft a story to share in person that's different than the one that I would have if I were looking at your website on my own. Always tell me the design problem that you're attempting to solve. Every presentation should start that way, setting up the context, telling me about the audience, telling me about the problem, and telling me how your solution is going to be unique. And you should do that before I see anything. Don't read anything in your presentation. Nothing takes me out of the moment more than knowing you're over there just reading. And again, if you're reading, you could just send me that information. I could read it on my own. I really want to hear you. I want to hear your perspective. I want to hear your point of view. And that's something that if you're reading, I really don't get. Really think about the story that you want to tell about yourself and about your work and how they influenced each other and how all of those things make you an ideal candidate and a special person. I think that's really what we're striving for here, giving you a chance to talk about yourself in a way that makes you stand out. My favorite thing to tell everybody who's preparing to give a good presentation is this. Don't tell me anything that I can see by looking. I can obviously see the colors. I can see the typeface. I can see the image treatments. What I can't see is the setup. I can't see the context. I don't know the audience. I don't know the design problem you're solving. I don't know your inspiration. I don't know what you were doing when that inspiration hit or what sort of process you went through to get to that moment of inspiration. And I think that's part of something that I really want to hear in this presentation, something that the only way that I can get that information is from you when you're sharing it with me in person. Zoom Portfolio Presentation Tip 4. Use the features of Zoom. The built-in features of Zoom are really great. That's probably why Zoom is so successful. And you should maximize them as best you can to help you deliver a good presentation. First, I want to tell you a little tip about using screen share. Just because you're sharing a screen doesn't mean you have to share your whole screen. I would never recommend that you do that. And what's great about Zoom is it gives you the feature to select only the window that you want to share. Once you've clicked the share screen icon, that's the little green one at the bottom of your Zoom window, a window pops up that gives you a chance to select the window that you want to share. Here's an expert tip. When I learned this one, this completely changed the way that I understood presentations. If you're giving a presentation using Keynote or Google Slides, use Presenter View. Presenter View gives you two windows, one that shows the slides, the other that shows your notes as well as thumbnails of the slides. And then when you go into share screen, only share the window of your slides. Then you have your notes and your thumbnails on your screen while the person you're presenting to sees the slides. If you use lots of video or lots of animation heavy work in your portfolio, that's great. I love it. But Zoom isn't always great at sharing videos. So one really good workaround I would recommend is having all of those animations or videos on a website where you can share the URL. And to share the URL, do that through the chat. So when it's time to talk about that one particular aspect of your work, put it in the chat, send it to the reviewer, have them take a look at it on their screen where you know it's going to look great, and then you can talk about it. Zoom Portfolio Presentation Tip 5. You got to practice. While you should try to treat your portfolio review like a professional presentation, it's really not. You're here to practice and get some feedback that you can use in the real world. So don't worry too much if you have some technical issues. It happens. It's okay. And keep in mind too that reviewer is on your team. They're there for you and they'll support you in whatever you need, even if it's with a technical issue. Okay, that's it. 5 tips for portfolio presentations in your portfolio review. Coming up May 16th, AIGA LA Portfolio Review. There'll be a link in the description to get to the event page. Can't wait to see you there. Please let me know if you have questions.